The playoffs are here, and you can predict the action all the way to the finals with FanDuel Predicts. Predict the spread, the total points, and even the game-winning moments that make the playoffs. Sign up and get a $25 bonus with FanDuel Predicts.
Offered by FanDuel Prediction Markets, LLC, a registered futures commission merchant. 18-plus bonus is non-withdrawable and expires 7 days after receipt. Trading derivatives involves significant risk and may not be suitable for all investors. Manage your activity with their consumer protection tools. Restrictions apply. See terms at FanDuel.com/predicts/bonus-offer-terms.
Inside the Lincoln Memorial Reflecting Pool. That is unless you also want to spend 10 years in federal prison. All right, here's that promised full weather forecast for you. I don't know if you want to hear it, but here it is. It is already 83 degrees right now at 5:04 a.m. outside our Midtown Manhattan studios here at 77 WABC. It's going up to an even 100. Tomorrow going to be a little bit better for the actual July 4th holiday day. It will be a high of 95 tomorrow, so a little better. Again, right now it's 88 degrees and going up to 94 in Tehran, where they're going to start that outdoor funeral a little bit less than a day from now. And in some parts of New York City City Hall, it's just 54 degrees. Let me get to that story for you, because temperatures inside City Hall, in some parts of City Hall, were as low as 54 degrees. That's according to a number of inside reporters for the New York Post who used special devices to check the temperatures inside City Hall after Mayor Mamdani famously and controversially demanded and told all New Yorkers that they should set their thermostats inside their homes and their offices to 78 degrees. Now, most of City Hall was actually within a few degrees compliant of that 78 degree number, but there were a lot of spots, according to the New York Post reporters, that were, again, as low as 54 degrees. It's going to be hotter in some ways, at least culturally, inside Madison Square Garden today, and it was last night. This is a big story as far as all the massive celebrity presence there, if you're the kind of person who's interested in that. Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce kicked off their wedding weekend last night with a rehearsal dinner of sorts. It's always a misnomer, really, rehearsal dinners. I don't think anything gets really rehearsed. But there were massive, massive numbers of big-time celebrities there. Gigi Hadid, Bradley Cooper, a bunch of other major stars, and, of course, a lot of other sports and sports-related stars. Erin Andrews, the former ESPN, now Fox reporter. Jarrett Stahl, her husband, who's an NHL player. And, again, a very star-studded situation down at Madison Square Garden on 34th, 7th Avenue. That's really going to be the place. Apparently, it's going to be sometime this evening, the wedding. Not all the details have been revealed as of yet, but that's what's going on there. Now, there is some controversy going on as far as politics. Of course, there has to be when these kinds of things happen. A number of observers in the area have noticed that the homeless people who are very often seen on the streets in and around Madison Square Garden are nowhere to be seen. We're nowhere to be seen in the hours before that rehearsal dinner last night. Some people are complaining that those people were scooped up and put somewhere else, maybe as a courtesy to the wedding and the rehearsal dinner by Mayor Mamdani. We probably won't ever really find out that as far as official words go. But there you have it. There, of course, you had to have some controversy in addition to people talking about how much money has been spent for this. But the two of them have the money, that's for sure. All right, 5:07, let's get you updated on the traffic. The Apple Bank Traffic Desk. Well, I want to get you updated again on what is a quiet situation right now when it comes to traffic. And it's going to get worse as time goes on. So I want to focus on the bridges and tunnels for you right now. Right now, all of the bridges and tunnels looking pretty good, with a couple of exceptions. There's some planned work on the Verrazano Bridge. That is going to be basically... it's a full closure of the Staten Island-bound upper level. It should be getting cleared up by now, but mostly it's all clear on the roads. On the subways, just to let you know about some of the subway stuff that you really need to know today is that a bunch of the lines, including the 2, 3, 4, 5, the A, the C, the E, so many other lines are on a Saturday schedule. Just about almost all the major lines on a Saturday schedule today on the subways if you're going to be out and about in the city. But again, we're not expecting the roads to get too bad during most of the day because so many people have the day off work. But we'll get you more updated on that as the day goes along. Traffic is sponsored by Apple Bank, now with its highest annual percentage yield this year on any 6 to 12-month CD. Visit your local Apple Bank to open today. Member FDIC, $25,000 minimum deposit required to open. New money only. Early withdrawal penalty may apply. All right, let's get you back to the big stories of the day. And I want you to talk about this one because this is pretty much putting an end to some speculation that there was no evidence at all of any coordinated or even individual attacks on the Lincoln Memorial reflecting pool, at least according to the U.S. Attorney for the city of Washington, D.C., and a grand jury. Here's Janine Pirro explaining an indictment of a 3-time U.S. canoe team Olympic team member and how she describes what he did at the reflecting pool.
So, today a grand jury has returned a felony indictment against a defendant, David Hearn, for felony destruction of property, for which he faces 10 years in prison. The indictment is in response to an incident that occurred on June 19th of 2026, in which the defendant Hearn ripped a piece of recently installed sealant on the bottom of the reflecting pool at the Lincoln Memorial. The evidence shows, and we will prove beyond a reasonable doubt, that Hearn willfully destroyed property at the Lincoln Memorial reflecting pool. This was a deliberate act to damage the reflecting pool.
And Hearn is claiming that he didn't do anything on purpose and he was surprised when they clapped the cuffs on him. We'll see. Again, he's facing 10 years in prison for doing this. And there are a number of people who have stated in their own testimony, both publicly and then also posting it publicly online, that they saw him really deliberately pull up this liner and try to damage the reflecting pool. Well, it was a major interview last night of President Trump on CNBC where he talked about a number of things. He started out by saying that we are in a very strong position as a country right now. Here he is.
Mr. President, it's great to see you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me in this incredible place. And
It's a nice place.
Happy Independence Day and happy semi-quincentennial.
Yeah, that's true.
If I got that right.
Thank you.
250 years, and I just want to start flying at about 40,000 feet, and just, which you've done in a pretty nice plane lately, by the way, I saw that. What's so amazing about this country, in your words, for the last 250 years? You always say, like never been seen before. There's never been a country like this that's ever been seen in the history of the world.
Well, a lot of people don't understand that right now we are in a golden age. You understand it very well. You cover it very well. We have more factories being built today than ever before. We have more people working today than at any time ever in the history of our country, and people making more money than they've ever made. I'm not talking about rich people. I'm talking about people that have like normal or normalized jobs.
That was CNBC's Joe Kernan, of course, asking the questions. But, of course, there were more controversial parts of the interview and questions that were posed to the president. And there was, of course, in the last couple of days, there have been a number of documents showing that President Trump has increased his personal wealth by more than $2 billion since retaking office. That's despite actually losing his net worth, a number of his net worth, a percentage of his net worth, a considerable percentage of his net worth during his first term. So he was asked point blank if anything funny is going on here.
One in AI.
In the disclosure this week, the amount of money that you and the family made in crypto, it was an outsized number. I was just asking, were you know about the crypto ventures? So that was just something.
By the way, I could know about it. I didn't.
Right.
I mean, there's nothing illegal. There's nothing wrong with it. I could know.
There's a specific, I remember Title 18, Section 208 from Congress, you, the Vice President, and you do not have, you would have to recuse yourself.
I didn't even know that.
You would have to recuse yourself on every decision that could, running the country, that could have anything to do with you. So it just isn't feasible to do.
So, of course, Trump claiming that there was nothing illegal done there, and Joe Kernan explaining that is basically his right as president. The president and the vice president are basically excused from some of the other criteria of other members of the government because then they wouldn't be able to make any decisions. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, in a separate interview on CBS, backing up that basic idea and basically saying that there isn't an issue. Here's Scott Bessent.
The president's financial disclosure showed that crypto had become a major source of his income while the administration is shaping crypto policy. Even if the White House says there's no conflict of interest, which is what we've heard, is there an appearance problem when so many folks are struggling?
Well, again, I don't think there's an appearance problem. The president, this is an innovation presidency. So whether it's digital assets, whether it's AI, whether it's everything that is going on in the tech ecosystem, that all Americans are benefiting from.
So basically saying because of the fast-moving technology, there isn't much that you can really blame the president for. But, of course, in also a serious part of the interview, the president also talked about how Iran is dealing with economic problems and is weaker than some people are trying to make it sound like.
Joe, I did a blockade that was essentially not a blockade. It was a wall of steel. We have the great Navy, the greatest Navy in the world. These guys are unbelievable. Not one ship got through to Iran. They have 300% inflation. They're making no money. So we're going to take some of the money and we're going to buy them. They need food. They need corn and wheat and soybeans. And we're going to have exclusively our American farmers provide that, assuming we get to the position where we should get to. I think we're going to get there. Their strength is gone. Their bravado is gone, although they keep up a pretty good friend.
So again, to reiterate, the president saying that the money that Iran's making now that some of their oil is being sold will be taken from them and they will be forced to buy from U.S. farmers their produce and other essential food. Now, President Trump said at the end of that soundbite that Iran is still showing a lot of bravado, and they are doing so even as they now prepare for the massive funeral for the slain dictator of Iran, Ali Khamenei. Yes, the same Ali Khamenei who died, was killed on the very first day of the U.S. Iran war all the way back in February 28th. But because so many of their leaders were in hiding and they wanted to make sure that this basically shaky peace deal with the United States held for a while, they delayed the funeral until now. This will be a several-day event. In Tehran alone, they are expecting 15 to... This is with the bravado. Maybe it's just the bravado. But the Iranian government is expecting between 15 and 16 million people in Tehran alone to come out and participate in this funeral. Right now, the body is laying in state at a building called the Grand Mosala, and that will be open soon for the public to walk by and view. But again, speaking of the bravado, Iran is warning the United States and Israel to avoid any attacks, maybe even assassinations or something like that during the funeral. Now, why would they make that threat? Because there are a number of their leaders who are finally coming out of hiding for the first time since the war. That includes a powerful general named Ahmad Vahidi. Ahmad Vahidi is now the leader of the IRGC, which is Iran's terrorist army, stands for Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. The C is the Corps. The C is for Corps at the end there, and he will apparently be in public for the first time since the beginning of the war. He's not been seen since then. He is a primary target, or at least considered to be a very, very top target. So this is a interesting developing story. We'll see how many people show up. For those of you who remember the funeral for Khamenei's predecessor, Ayatollah Khamenei, back in 1989, that was also a major spectacle, with his coffin being carried out like a body surfing event among the crowds of basically hysterical mourners, so much so that Ayatollah Khamenei's body fell out of the casket at one point in what was really a shocking scene. We'll see if we get that kind of a situation. Looks like this is going to be much more organized, and the body will not be allowed to go out into the crowd like it did during the time of Ayatollah Khamenei. All right, it's 5:17. Let's get to the Appleback Traffic Desk. Now, I want to get you a little bit more updated on an interesting situation you should know as we get to this. Again, it's a federal holiday. The roads are going to be pretty clear until maybe later in the day when we see a little bit more people maybe getting out of town for this long weekend if they didn't already leave. One of the things I want you to know about mass transit, the Long Island Railroad is running on a regular weekday schedule. However, Metro North is on a Sunday schedule. You really have to check those apps if you have them to find out what time your trains are. If you're expecting going to work regularly on Metro North this morning, make sure you realize it is a Sunday schedule. Long Island Railroad will be normal. Right now, we're not seeing any delays, however, on those lines. Now, New Jersey Transit, a little bit of another situation. You might see some delays along every single line of New Jersey Transit because of the extreme heat yesterday. NJT is saying that they had some equipment issues that caused some delays. So I want everyone to be aware of that right now. Traffic sponsored by Apple Bank. With an Apple Bank Pick Your Term CD, you get a guaranteed rate of return that fits your 6 to 12-month timeline. Stop by an Apple Bank branch to open. Member FDIC. $25,000 minimum deposit required to open. New money only. Early withdrawal penalty may apply. All right, let's get you back to some of the stories that are still developing out there right now. And right now we have an interesting situation, of course. Really, the big story today is that this is a federal holiday. I hope most of you have your day off and you already started your July 4th weekend. Here's some of the things that you can expect over the next couple of days here in New York and nationwide. There will be a number of ceremonies here in New York City today, and that includes a speech by Mayor Zohran Mamdani that he's going to deliver today from George Washington's desk in Lower Manhattan. Of course, George Washington was sworn in as president for his very first term here in Lower Manhattan in 1789, and that desk that was used during his inauguration has remained here. It is one of the great gems, one of the great items of history here in New York City, and Mayor Mamdani will make his speech surrounded by recently naturalized citizens. But of course, he won't be the only one. On Saturday here in New York, Vice President J.D. Vance is going to deliver a speech from aboard a naval aircraft carrier. There's going to be a big maritime event in New York Harbor, tall ships, new naval ships, and the whole thing, and that's going to be a lot of fun. Now, President Trump tonight is going to give a speech at Mount Rushmore in South Dakota, and then he's going to give another speech Saturday, tomorrow, in Washington, D.C., which will be followed by a fireworks show that organizers are saying is going to be the greatest, biggest, largest fireworks show ever, according to the organizers. Now, here in New York, of course, we will also have the traditional Macy's fireworks show, and that is going on as planned. The annual Coney Island hot dog eating contest. These are all tomorrow, actual July 4th moments. Hey, a great story that you may not have heard, very encouraging story that it really affects all of us. And this is all about the death rate in the United States. According to the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC, the death rate in the United States fell last year, 2025, to the lowest level ever since they started counting this. Now, there are a number of reasons for it. Some of it has to do with, of course, better medical care. But the biggest dent in the death rate was brought on by the fact that we are seeing a big drop in overdoses in the United States. And this seems to be directly connected to the closed borders, the tremendous drop in the number of fentanyl pills coming into the country, and just a tremendous drop in overdoses. It goes into the category of accidental deaths officially, but that is a tremendously positive development. Still, way too many accidental deaths and specifically overdoses in this country, but there's a lot of progress to be made, and so far it's being done so far, at least as of last year. I want to get you updated on that situation, the grave situation in Venezuela. There have been a number of stories here and there of some rescues. It's still certainly a tough situation, and unfortunately I have to let you know that the death toll has climbed to 2,595 people, still thousands missing. We're also getting some numbers on the damage situation. The UN estimating that the physical damage is $6.7 billion, and that there have been really a larger economic losses of more like $10 billion. Hundreds of buildings, of course, have been destroyed, and this is a dire situation right now across much of the world. I want to get you back updated on the Iran situation. I told you about the funeral and, of course, what President Trump said about forcing Iran to take some of their oil money and to buy food exclusively from the United States. We also have some other major stories between the United States and Iran percolating right now. The Washington Post causing a lot of controversy with an exclusive story that came out late yesterday, claiming that the Trump administration was very worried that the Israelis were going to assassinate even the Iranian leaders who were there at the negotiation table with the Americans recently, and that they were so worried about it that they warned the Iranian officials right during those talks that the Israelis may kill them. Of course, a lot of people are trying to read into that story to show some kind of fracture between the United States and Israel, but other people are looking at it as a little bit more straightforward, good cop, bad cop kind of tactic, where the United States made it clear that they will treat them more fairly or more leniently than the Israelis, so they better make a deal. Whether or not this is a controversy or not remains to be seen, but in both the Washington Post story and a New York Times follow-up, there's absolutely no evidence given of any plot to kill the Iranian negotiators, including the speaker of the Iranian parliament, who was there as well. Now, there was also some testy words at the UN yesterday between Mike Waltz, who is the UN ambassador, the U.S. ambassador to the UN, and the Iranian envoy. Here they go. Here they are going back and forth a little.
Unfortunately, the representative of the regime started his remarks today by saying apparently this council should not meet, should not speak. Let me remind you where you are. This is not Tehran. This is the United States of America. This is the United Nations Security Council. You will not silence this body. The representative goes on to say that the ambassador from Bahrain, the foreign minister, myself, and other members of this body are full of lies, that we're lying. Let me ask you, what here is a lie?
And that was Mike Waltz holding up pictures of the damage in Bahrain. Bahrain and the United Arab Emirates have taken a huge amount of the brunt of the attacks from Iran during the course of this war. And there's also still controversy coming out from what the folks at CNN have been doing in the last couple of days. In case you missed it, there was an exchange on CNN just the other day where one of the people in a panel and also the anchor, Alex Michelson, decided to say this about the difference between John Ossoff, who's a senator from Georgia, and Josh Shapiro, who was the governor of Pennsylvania. This is the comment that's causing so much controversy. Listen.
But on the Jewish thing, because
wrap it up real quick.
I was saying he is Jewish. He might be the Democrat that can thread the needle, because even though he's Jewish, he's very critical of the Israeli government, very critical of Benjamin Netanyahu. He has credibility on that issue. So it's possible that I think he could fill that lane in between the two extremes of the Democratic Party.
Ask Scott Wiener how that's working out for him.
Yeah, as a Jew, some people read a little more Jewish than other people, and John Ossoff may not read as Jewish as Josh Shapiro does.
A lot of people are asking, what was Michelson's meaning? What did he mean when he said some people read more Jewish than others? This is getting a tremendous amount of pushback online from a number of people in the news media, including left-wingers. A bunch of people basically saying that this is the kind of thing that no one else from any other minority would say. We'll see. Alex Michelson has not made any apology or further explanation for what he said. We'll see how this goes down for him. Another issue, we have some breaking news out of the state of Washington. A human rights commissioner for the Washington state named Luke Jasmine has resigned. There's been no official reason for it, but it might have something to do with these comments that he made brazenly online, complaining about how Jewish people want to have too many protections. Listen.
Discrimination. Why do we feel compelled to put out a special resolution for the Jewish people?
That was part of a rant where Luke Jasmine talked about he didn't believe that Jewish people should get a special resolution from the state against anti-Semitism. He also repeated a number of anti-Semitic tropes. He's no longer working for the state of Washington right now. So there's your latest update on a number of things from the, again, rising controversies over anti-Semitism and anti-Semitic tropes coming out of a number of different sources. Once again, Washington state has been at the center of some major issues and attacks against the Jewish community there. So Luke Jasmine may have gone a little bit too far and overstepped, to say the least. All right, let's get to the Apple Bank traffic desk. Get you updated. Right now, again, we are not seeing tremendous traffic like we would usually see on your regular Friday morning because of the federal holiday. So many places closed today. Your banks are closed. The post office closed, just so you know. But I want to get you updated on what you need to be prepared for in mass transit, in case you are one of the people like us who has to go into work today. First of all, Saturday schedules for almost every one of the major subway lines. That includes the 2, 3, 4, and 5, the ACE, the D, F, and the M, the G, the J, the N, the Q, and the R. Folks, it's a Saturday schedule. Just be prepared for some stoppages or some not-so-frequent service. That is not the case, however, on the Long Island Railroad. It is on a regular weekday schedule today. So don't expect, don't expect to have to wait too long there. But again, on the Metro North line, it is a Sunday schedule. So again, just you have to pay attention to your local stations. Maybe find out on the apps what's going on. And on the New Jersey Transit lines right now, there are some possible delays that you're going to see on a number of trains because of the heat yesterday doing some damage to a number of pieces of equipment. We're not really seeing any major issues right now. Good status right now at every one of the bridges and tunnels right now. There is some planned work still finishing up at the Verrazano, but right now, again, on the roads, bridges, and tunnels, it's mostly pretty good right now. All right, we have a lot more to get to here on the News Hour Morning Edition. I'm Jake Novak filling in for Noam Laden. Got some big stories for you, including the big news coming out of the World Cup and whether or not our baseball teams are going to be playing today. We'll be right back.
It's the 77 WABC News Hour.
Talking the news with Noam Laden.
All the news you need to know with Joe Nolan, traffic, Justin Ellick, sports. And now,
Talking the news with Noam
on 77 WABC.
And I'm Jake Novak in for Noam Laden this morning, and I'm going to be here for you for the next several hours. Also sitting in for Sid Rosenberg, I will be on Sid and Friends in the Morning. We have John Catsimatidis going to be joining us, Fernando Mateo, some other special guests, including Michael Cohen. Yes, that Michael Cohen will be joining us live in studio in the 9 a.m. hour. So we have a jam-packed day, even though it's a federal holiday and Sid is off. We don't take off here at 77 WABC Talk Radio. Now, if you're just joining us, want to get you updated on the big stories really quickly. Of course, again, another big scorcher today here in New York City. We're expected to go up to 100 degrees. Again, that's nothing new. It's July. I understand that's what happens in the summer here in New York City. But take all the precautions that you can. Please make sure that you're being safe. It's holiday, so maybe you don't have to rush around as much. That's important to know. Gonna have the big Travis Kelce, Taylor Swift wedding this weekend. They had the big rehearsal dinner last night. I know all of you listening aren't necessarily celebrity obsessed folks, but there were a lot of celebrities from the world of sports and the movies and music at Madison Square Garden for that so-called rehearsal dinner last night. There's going to be more in the coming days, and you might want to avoid the Garden a little bit unless you're a huge Taylor Swift or Travis Kelce fan, because it's going to be pretty crowded. Speaking of crowds, interesting moment about to unfold right now in Iran over the next couple of days. They are finally having the funeral for the deceased dictator, Ali Khamenei, who was killed on the first day of the U.S. Iran war, all the way back on February 28th, but they've had to delay the funeral ever since then for fear of all the dignitaries who would show up, the leaders of the Iranian terrorist armies perhaps coming out in public and getting assassinated. They finally feel confident enough to do this now. And again, getting back to the crowd numbers, the Iranian regime is saying between 15 and 20 million people in Tehran alone will come out for the funeral. Other cities, there will be millions as well. Again, these are all according to the Iranian regime. We'll see what really happens. And Iran is threatening the United States and the Israelis not to attack or try anything during these funerals. But of course, there will be a tempting target there. The leader of the Iranian IRGC will be apparently out in public for this. And he has been, of course, a high publicity target for some time. So those are the big stories right now for you. Going to get you updated on the business news that you know just for a moment. And here's our John Tarrant, who's going to get you updated on how the markets did before today's closure. Of course, we're off today. Here's John.
Good morning. Well, the shortened holiday week has come and gone. There's nobody on Wall Street today except for tourists. Everybody is at home with their families, having cookouts. Instead of buying and selling, they're frying and grilling for the weekend as we prepare to celebrate America's 250th birthday tomorrow. But yesterday, Thursday, we had a closing record on the Dow. It was up well over 500 points. The Nasdaq was lower, and the S&P 500 was very naughty because it was in the red for most of the day. And then right at the very last second, literally as the closing bell was ringing last evening, it tipped over into the green, but not by very much. It was essentially unchanged, or unched, as we say. But what is interesting about the S&P 500 yesterday is that there were more of its stocks up than down, and I guess it reflected that at the very last moment. The chip makers were hit hard again yesterday. The SOX, which is the Philadelphia index that tracks them, lower by about another 5 or 6%, especially companies that make tools to build semiconductors. So names like SanDisk and Nvidia and Micron were all lower yesterday. And Tesla had its worst close since July of last year, 2025. It was one of the biggest decliners in the Mag 7 yesterday, and that coming despite growing delivery numbers. They were up about 25%. Of course, we had the June job numbers, the non-farms, reporting 57,000 new jobs created in the month of June, not the 100 to 115,000 that had been anticipated by economists. Hiring clearly slowing now, and the prior 2 months were downgraded as well. So in summary, the Dow was at a record, the Nasdaq was lower, the S&P 500 eked into the green, gold was up yesterday, and WTI was trading around $68 a barrel. Now, one of the biggest data center investors, Blackstone QTS, abandoned plans to build a data center in the state of Virginia yesterday. This is a real victory for the locals there who've been campaigning for years to prevent what would have been a 2,100-acre campus in Manassas. Blackstone stock was up about 3% when this news came out at the close yesterday. And a good local story here, Jersey Mike's Casual Dining, a sub-store, has confidentially applied for an IPO, an initial public offering. Blackstone, again here, is going to oversee this one. Mike's has 3,500 locations around the world now. It was once a small company, but it's grown and grown and grown, and it's based in Manasquan in New Jersey. And so we come to next week, and on Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern, we get the minutes of the last Fed Reserve meeting, and that's important because it was the first one chaired by Kevin Warsh, and there's a lot of interest to see what was really said in that meeting. The minutes are eagerly awaited. John Terrett, 77 WABC News.
Thanks, John. I want to get you updated on the oil trade. Now, oil is trading today, not unlike the stock market. And John mentioned that it closed at the $68 a barrel level, and that's where it is right now. It's pretty flat, although it is down a little bit. We're at $60.65 on oil, so I wanted to let you know about that. More to your concerns, especially if you're getting out onto the roads today or going to do it maybe tomorrow for the July 4th holiday. Gasoline prices now, the national average, according to AAA, $3.82. That's down a penny from yesterday. We are down 75 cents from where we were at the height of the spike in gasoline prices because of the Iran war. And we are now 84 cents higher than we were on day one of the Iran war before any of this started to affect gasoline prices more directly. So it's starting to come down continually, although it's slow, much slower than the drop in the price of oil. We were at $119 a barrel at the height of the oil trade, and we're all the way down to $68 now. The drop in gasoline prices hasn't been as fast or as strong, but it is steady right now for the last couple of days. And we are seeing Saudi Arabia really starting to ramp up its oil shipments through the Strait of Hormuz. 34 million barrels of oil have gone through Hormuz from the Saudis just since June 17th. So that's moving up higher. So we're starting to see a difference there. All right. Now let's get to the traffic on the Apple Bank Traffic Desk. Again, as I've been trying to let you know all morning, we're not expecting any major issues on the roads, at least not yet. We might get a little bit more crowded here and there, but most people are staggering their time to get out and wherever they're going for the July 4th holiday. By that, I mean not everyone is going at the same time like we see at a rush hour for a regular workday. So I do want to get you updated on the bridges and the major bridges right now and the tunnels. They're all looking good right now. Still some plan work going on in the Verrazano, but nothing major there. So the roads are looking pretty good. Please remember that the subways are working on a Saturday schedule today, which means that there's going to be a little bit less frequent trains here and there, but still running pretty normally. Speaking of normally, the Long Island Railroad, despite the fact this is a federal holiday, is working on a regular weekday schedule today. So be aware of that. And Metro North, however, is going to be on a Sunday schedule. And New Jersey Transit, just to make it even more confusing, has had some residual delays because of the heat that hit a number of equipment centers on that line yesterday. So, again, check your schedules, check at your stations. There may be some delays, and they also may be some better service than you expect. Traffic is sponsored by Apple Bank. With an Apple Bank Pick Your Term CD, you get a guaranteed rate of return that fits your 6 to 12-month timeline. Stop by an Apple Bank branch to open. Member FDIC, $25,000 minimum deposit required to open. New money only. Early withdrawal penalty may apply. I want to get you updated on the big sports news. Of course, it's been a major summer already for sports. And of course, however, on July 2nd, yesterday, there were no Mets and no Yankees games. That's an unusual night when neither one of them are playing. But they will be playing tonight. The Twins are going to start a series at Yankee Stadium, and the Mets are at the first place Braves all weekend in Atlanta. Now let's get to the World Cup. Major, of course, matches. This is still the knockout round of 32. Spain easily defeating Austria 3-0. Spain, one of the favorites to win this whole thing, and they looked good yesterday. Portugal pulling out a win in just those last moments. They beat Croatia 2-1. Portugal thought they had tied it up late in stoppage time, but the goal that they scored was disallowed because of offside, so Portugal moves on. Switzerland kind of an under-the-radar team so far, defeating Algeria 2-0. So those three teams, Spain, Portugal, and Switzerland, all move on to the round of 16. We have 3 more games in the round of 32 to tell you about. They're all being going on today. Australia versus Egypt. That'll be at the Dallas Cowboys Stadium in Arlington, Texas. That'll be at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. Argentina is going to play Cape Verde, or Capo Verde, as you say in Spanish. That's going to be at in Miami at 6 p.m. tonight. And Colombia is going to take on Ghana. That'll be in Kansas City. And be concerned about the weather there. Kansas City summers can be very sweltering. I'll check on the weather for that in the next couple of hours. That game is going to be at 8:30 p.m., though, so thankfully it'll be under the cover of the moon instead of the sun. And by the way, for those of you wondering about the United States in the round of 16 goes up against Belgium Monday night in Seattle. So that's going to be the next time the U.S. team gets into action. Getting back to baseball just for a second, for those of you who've been following the incredible story of Milwaukee Brewers pitcher Jacob Misiorowski. He's the guy who throws 105-mile-an-hour pitches regularly and had an inning where he threw 10 straight pitches over 100 miles an hour. So every time he gets on the mound, it's exciting. Wasn't a great outing for him, at least not luck-wise. He lost. The Brewers lost to the Reds 7-2 yesterday. Misiorowski wasn't the reason why, though. He pitched 5 innings, gave up just 1 earned run, struck out 10 in the 5 innings, and his ERA is still pretty nice at 1.47, but there were 4 unearned runs scored while he was on the mound, and that's a big reason why the Brewers lost. Another interesting story coming out of the sports world right now, looking at it really closely, is the situation with LeBron James. And you may have heard that the 41-year-old superstar said that he was not going to return to the Lakers. And for a long time, it was considered to be just a battle between 2 teams for where he would go next, between the Cleveland Cavaliers, his hometown team, potentially going back to that team for the 3rd time, or the Golden State Warriors, where LeBron is interested reportedly in teaming up with Steph Curry for basically a senior tour, one last year in the NBA, and see what they can get done. However, there is a new team in the mix right now, and it's the Philadelphia 76ers. Now that the Philadelphia 76ers have pulled off an incredible trade to get Jaylen Brown from the Boston Celtics, apparently joining the Sixers has become more attractive to LeBron, possibly. So we'll see where he ends up as far as that's concerned. Getting back to baseball here for a second. Of course, it's July the 4th weekend. So what do we want to talk about? We want to talk about hot dogs. Of course, the annual Coney Island hot dog eating contest will be tomorrow in Brooklyn. But, of course, there's basically a virtual hot dog eating contest every time you go to a baseball game. And according to a new study, Mets fans, here's something the Mets can be proud of. They're almost number 1 in one category. Mets fans are the number 2 fan group going to Citi Field for eating hot dogs, only outpaced by Washington National fans who eat more. Mets fans average 1.8 hot dogs per game, every Met fan who goes into Citi Field, and that is just a hair behind the Washington Nationals' 1.9 hot dogs a game. Very impressive. 71% of people who go to Citi Field drink something at the game. And total calories for Mets fans, 960. That is higher than the Major League Baseball average of 915. So there you go. Important stuff to know about what's going on. Who drinks the most at games? Again, Washington National fans. They're tied with the Chicago White Sox for number 1. So these are important things you need to know about what's going on with baseball fans on this July 4th weekend. That's for sure. Wanted to make sure everybody knew about that. All right, getting more serious right now, we have a situation in the city of Seattle. As I said before, Seattle's going to be hosting that big World Cup soccer game on Monday, but there's a lot of controversy going on in that city on other fronts, including the mayor of Seattle, Kate Wilson, who's decided to spend a serious amount of money in her city to welcome trans people into the city. She has also talked about that, and basically this is a city that has major deficits. Here she is explaining this.
Comments on the Trans and Queer Interdepartmental Team, IDT, formed by the mayor to establish a structured permanent framework for supporting transgender and queer individuals who have relocated to Seattle to escape hostile environments in other states. The clear intent of the IDT is to redirect public funds to pay for housing, food, and elective and cosmetic medical procedures for trans individuals. We oppose the use of taxpayer money for these purposes.
So this is someone publicly commenting on Kate Wilson's plans. Seattle, the city of Seattle, has something about almost a $500 million budget deficit over the next 3 years. That's their projected budget deficit. And so there's some pushback on an official office being set up in Seattle to welcome trans people and to offer them very expensive medical care. Also, a developing controversy, still, I would say, enduring controversy coming out of the state of Minnesota. The state of Minnesota and Governor Tim Walz just pardoned an immigrant to Minnesota who was accused and actually convicted of repeatedly sexually abusing a 10-year-old girl. Now, the Department of Homeland Security is pushing back on this, basically accusing Tim Walz of only doing this because Tu Lo Vang, who was one who pleaded guilty to this and was convicted, because he was about to be deported. In other words, because the Trump administration wanted to deport him, people, even with this kind of record, are getting pardoned by the governor. Interesting headline, by the way, in CBS. The headline is Feds Attack Minnesota. I don't really think that's the headline. I think the headline is that Minnesota is pardoning someone with that kind of a record. But again, that's up to you. Potentially some groundbreaking and maybe earth-shattering news coming out of the Special Inspector General report about the assassination attempt on then-candidate Trump in Butler, Pennsylvania. A couple of things that are really jumping out. This is the official report that came out. And remember, that happened almost exactly 2 years ago, July 13, 2024. First, we're finding out that, according to this report, the person in the Secret Service who was running the counter-drone operation, there's something called a counter-drone operator, was using the internet to Google the site of the rooftop where the would-be assassin was spotted and fired shots at President Trump. Of course, another innocent person was killed during that shooting who was in between the president and the shooter. So this seems to show pretty much a lack of real preparation by the Secret Service with the logistics of the site. There's been a lot of controversy over that rooftop, how that wasn't blocked off, why there weren't Secret Service agents on that rooftop instead of the attempted shooter, the alleged shooter, or of course he's been killed. He was immediately killed by a sharpshooter by the Secret Service. There's also questions about why the Secret Service didn't use equipment to block the line of sight between the rooftop, where, again, Thomas Crooks, who has been accused of being the shooter that day, and of course now he is deceased, so you don't have to say alleged, but there are questions as to why equipment that was there, equipment that the Secret Service had to block lines of sight from rooftops or windows that are usually used, routinely used, why that wasn't in place at the time. So there'll be a lot more controversy as more of the details of this report come out. All right, it's 5:47. Let's go to the Apple Bank traffic desk. And again, we're still looking at an interesting situation on the major commuter lines, and I want to make sure everyone understands. Yes, it is Friday, and yes, it is a national holiday, but the Long Island Railroad is running on a regular weekday schedule. So make sure that you got your weekday schedule in your hands or on your phones before you head out on the Long Island Railroad today. But again, this is confusing. Metro North is on a Sunday schedule. So don't assume one is like the other. They're not in lockstep. And New Jersey Transit trains may be delayed in a number of lines, pretty much every line possibly, because of equipment damage that happened yesterday because of all the heat in the area. So make sure you know about all of that. If you're getting out on the roads, this would be a good time to get out if you're looking to get a head start on some of the July 4th traffic in case you didn't leave yesterday. Looks like all the bridges and tunnels have good status. Even that work that was going on in the Verrazano has now ended. That's an update from the last time I gave you an update. So there you go. Might be a good time to get out now. Traffic sponsored by Apple Bank. Now with its highest annual percentage yield this year on any 6 to 12 month CD. Visit your local Apple Bank to open today. Member FDIC. $25,000 minimum deposit required to open. New money only. Early withdrawal penalty may apply. Hey, I want to get you updated on another story. I know you're probably thinking about ways to cool off today, but we still need to do some cooking, and it looks like that push here in New York by Democrats to ban natural gas hookups and gas stoves is still going forward. Just got a ruling from the U.S. Court of Appeals, the Second Circuit, rejecting a lawsuit by the natural gas industry groups that were trying to stop the New York All-Electric Buildings Act. This is an appeals court basically upholding lower court rulings that had determined that federal law does not preempt the state's regulations on natural gas hookups. In other words, the feds can't do this. So, of course, there are going to be other fights in court over this, but natural gas, getting a natural gas stove in a new construction home, and not going to be as easy. This continues to be a controversy, not only in New York, but across the country. But New York's out in front of this. This will be the first state to have this kind of a ban. Let's go from New York to Texas right now. And a surprise poll, at least some people might be very surprised by these numbers. According to a new New York Times Siena poll, the Senate race in Texas this year is a toss-up right at this point. Ken Paxton, who won the primary to be the Republican nominee for the Senate, does lead James Tallarico, the Democrat, by 51% to 47%. But again, the margin of error puts this thing up for grabs. The poll was conducted among 656 likely Texas voters from June 19th to June 27th. Now, some people may be pointing out that there were similar polls like this that came out in 2018 when Senator Ted Cruz got a pretty serious challenge from Democrat Beto O'Rourke, and there were a number of polls that showed him within 1 or 2 points of Cruz throughout the polling period, throughout that midterm election that year as well. Cruz won by a slightly more comfortable margin in 2018. So possibly something to look at over the next couple of days as far as that's concerned. Want to, again, get you updated a little bit on the financial news situation. Oil prices, of course, I'm sure are on your mind, and gasoline prices. We're at 60. While the stock markets are closed today, that's not the case for oil trading. We do have oil trading today, and we're at $68.65 the barrel, just slightly lower from where we closed yesterday. Gasoline prices down another penny overnight. We're at $3.82 a gallon, national average. We are down about 74 cents from the recent high. We got up to $4.56 national average at the height of the oil prices and at the height of the Iran war. So we're down 74 cents from there, but still 84 cents higher than we were the day the Iran war started, and we hadn't yet seen any major effect going into the gas prices for us. Another item, and you heard John Tarrant tell you about the jobs report that came out yesterday. For those of you who missed that, 57,000 net new jobs added in June, according to the U.S. government. That was less than half of that was expected. 115,000 was expected for June. But the major stocks and the major stock investors saw this as good news because they see the basically tepid job market as a possibility, as something that may stop the Fed from raising interest rates. So they celebrated it on the Dow. It has 600-point gain. But because of more tech sell-offs in the chip market, the NASDAQ was down. That didn't have anything to do with the jobs report. But one aspect of the jobs report that is concerning a number of people, and that's called the participation rate. For those who don't know, the participation rate is basically the number of people who are either employed in America, working age people, or looking for a job. And that went down to 61.5%. Most people really looking for a participation rate of closer to 65 or 70%. That's what they would really like to see. And it went down again. And in fact, if you take out the era of COVID when we had all the shutdowns, this is the lowest participation rate we have seen in exactly 50 years in America. So this is concerning a number of people. And by the way, the lower participation rate is a big reason why the unemployment rate went down from 4.3% to 4.2% because the unemployment rate only counts people who are trying to get a job. Once you leave the job market and stop looking for a new job, you don't get counted in the statistics anymore. Government economic statistics, of course, very controversial. I'm not a big fan of them, but there you go. That is something, though, to be concerned about, that we do see fewer people officially in the participation rate. Again, I want to get you updated on the exact forecast for today, just so that everyone understands. We are expected to hit 100 degrees today. It did hit 100 degrees around noon yesterday. So again, a hot day in New York. That's nothing new for July in New York City, but still be careful with what you're going to do today. Make sure you get your extra water. It doesn't hurt to give people that little bit of advice. Story that's actually continuing to be controversial in the city is, of course, Mayor Mamdani very famously and controversially earlier this week urged New Yorkers to set their thermostats at 78 degrees in their homes and in their offices. Most people do not believe that is very realistic, but that's what the mayor is pushing. According to the New York Post, who sent a bunch of reporters into City Hall yesterday, there were parts of City Hall that were as cool as 54 degrees yesterday. Now, the New York Post admits that most of City Hall was within 1 or 2 degrees or maybe 3 degrees of that 78-degree benchmark set by Mayor Mamdani, but there are definitely some parts of City Hall where you can cool off and where they are not following all the rules. Again, another major story going on here this weekend, love it or hate it, the Taylor Swift, Travis Kelce wedding. They had the big rehearsal dinner last night at Madison Square Garden. The wedding is going to be apparently either on the 4th or maybe today. We'll find out about that, but there are, of course, a ton of major celebrities here and there coming in out of the garden. And if you're into that kind of thing, you can check that out. Hey, if you're into watching Iranians going crazy, you can see that starting pretty much tomorrow. But beginning today, there will be a more, apparently, calm and orderly procession for the body of Ali Khamenei, who is now lying in state in Tehran. They are telling us, the Iranian regime, that between 15 and 20 million people will come out in Tehran just for the funeral alone, just in Tehran alone. This is for Ali Khamenei, the deceased dictator of Iran. Now, the reason why this is more of a national and international story is because Iran has used this funeral as an opportunity to threaten the United States and Israel not to do anything during the funeral to Iran. And that may be easier said than done, because the leader of the IRGC, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, his name is General Ahmad Vahidi, will be apparently attending in public and will be seen in public for the first time since the war began. He has not actually been seen publicly since 20 days before the Iran war started. Last time he was seen in public was February 8th. Again, and the war started on February 28th. So he is apparently going to come out in public. There are going to be a number of other big-name people showing up to this funeral, however, by the way, not just from Iran, but the Prime Minister of Pakistan is going to be paying his respects. Shehbaz Sharif will be there, and China, Afghanistan, and a number of Iran's neighbors will be sending leaders, maybe not the actual head of state like Prime Minister Sharif from Pakistan, but that is noteworthy. They must feel very confident that nothing will happen as far as that goes. The official burial for Ali Khamenei, because there's going to be a lot of days of public mourning and other types of ceremonies, but the official burial will not be until July 9th. So that won't be until this coming Thursday. So there will be a lot of days of these ceremonies. And that's another thing to note. Understand that these foreign dignitaries, including the Prime Minister of Pakistan, will not be there for every single one of the days of this event. So pay attention to that as far as that's concerned. All right, 5:57. Let's get you to the Apple Bank traffic desk. And again, want to make sure everyone understands that while this is a national holiday and we are not seeing the kind of traffic that we usually see, there are some changes as far as your train schedules are going today. On the New York City subways, just about every single line, the 2, the 3, the 4, the 5, the ACE, the D, the F, the M, NQ, and R, they are all running on Saturday schedules. So not as often are you going to see your train this morning if you're taking the subway. Weekday schedules, however, on the Long Island Railroad, so you will see your trains as you usually would see on any other Friday, but just to confuse you even more, the Metro North is on a Sunday schedule today. So again, make sure you're following all of the updates on those apps that they have to make sure when your train is going to come in. And of course, I'm letting you know, it's a Sunday schedule on the Metro North. Good news at all the bridges and tunnels, all the major bridges and tunnels right now. Everything moving along pretty nicely right now. There are going to be some people out on the roads to get a head start on the July 4th vacation, wherever they're going. But again, that's much more staggered than your usual rush hour. So if you're looking to do that, you might want to do that right now. And as I said before, we're talking about $3.82 right now for an average gallon of gas. May not be anything to celebrate necessarily, but that is down about 74 cents from where we were just a few weeks ago. So maybe you also want to fill up in case anything else changes. All right, again, other stories I want to make sure you're updated on as far as everything else goes is that, first of all, you need to know what's going on here at 77 WABC. Jake Novak, that's me. I'll be filling in for Sid Rosenberg and Sid and Friends. We've got Fernando Mateo here in the studio. John Katsimatidis will be here. And we have a special guest at 9 a.m. You're not going to want to miss. We'll be right back with Sid and Friends in the morning.
The Marine Toys for Tots foster care program is bringing hope to children who need it most. Every 2 minutes, a child enters foster care, often with only a small bag of belongings. More than 400,000 children face trauma and uncertainty, many before age 8. This May, during Foster Care Awareness Month, Toys for Tots is creating Room for Joy. In 2025, nearly 375,000 children received comfort through toys, books, and essentials, reminding them they are not alone. Donate now and change a child's life.